All right, welcome everybody. So this is HEMA Strong presenting tournament prep, nutrition, hydration, and heat management. All right, so who am I? I am Chuck Gross. I am a nutrition coach and personal trainer. I'm the director of technology for Stronger You Nutrition, as well as Anytime Fitness. I'm a longsword instructor at Broken Plow and Pittsburgh Fighters Guild. I'm the rep for Western PA's satellite chapter of the Sabre Legion, or the Temple Guards. I'm the founder of HEMA Strong. And my personal experience is that I used to be over 400 pounds, found out I was going to be a dad, so then I lost 200 pounds and have kept it off for 15 plus years. All right, so what is HEMA Strong? If you're not aware, we are a Facebook community of 3,100 plus members. We're a blog, a YouTube channel, we're online nutrition coaching, and we started in 2017 as a way to get better info out there. When I would go to tournaments and events, I would fight and I'd have my rehydration kit and my food packed, and you know people were bombarding me with questions, and I'm like, hey, there's some people that need some information, so I'm going to start something that allows them to get that information in an easy and accessible way. So our mission statement is to help martial artists with their fitness goals in a body neutral way while fostering a supportive, inclusive, and encouraging community. So we're community first. So what's the agenda of this presentation? It's tournament before care, hydration, lifestyle, and nutrition. Tournament care during the event, nutrition, hydration, and heat management. And that includes some basic information about heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and then tournament recovery and aftercare. And at the bottom of the slide, you'll see that it's my medical disclaimer. The content of this presentation is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't play a doctor on the internet or TV. It does not take the place of medical advice or treatment from a physician, so you should consult your own doctor or qualified healthcare professional for specific health concerns or advice or questions. A big part of that is I'm going to be talking a lot about salt because it's important for hydration. However, if you have blood pressure issues, kidney issues, that's an example of where like I'm giving general advice. You want to talk to your doctor just to make sure that anything you try new has been vetted by them. All right, so before the tournament, hydration. So preparation begins the week leading up to the tournament. So hydration has to happen days before, not the day of or after you start sweating. Do not leave this to chance. If you're sweating, it's already too late if you haven't started hydrating. You are behind. You are entering into dehydration. Hydration is not just water, it's water and electrolytes. So your kidneys can process about 30 ounces of fluid per hour. Anything beyond that is waste and it can actually dehydrate you. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, salt is critical. Salt increases your blood volume, it stimulates your thyroid, your immune system, the liver. If you're deficient in salt, it affects everything. Uh, as far as lifestyle and nutrition, getting some sleep, 7 to 9 hours. Everybody's sleep needs are a little bit different. You can kind of tell. You should be able to spring up out of bed, and if you're not, you're probably sleep deficient. So getting additional sleep and recovery leading up to the event is critical. Regarding food, much like you wouldn't want to introduce any new techniques before a tournament, it's the same with foods. Like you shouldn't be trying new foods because we want to avoid gastric upset. We want to avoid changes in our micronutrient levels, things like that. We just want to keep everything status quo. As far as a very popular thing for endurance runners is carb loading, which is you eat a bunch of carbs more than you normally would beforehand, but that's not a thing even for endurance runners. What you have for dinner the day before the event and then for breakfast that day are typically what's going to fuel you for most of the day, unless you're doing something grueling like a 50 plus mile race where you're going to burn through that very quickly. HEMA does not have that much of an energy cost. It's not something you need to like overload your system with and then you're going to burn off during the day. So your digestive system can really only process the max of 2.5 calories times your body mass at rest per day. I'm 250 pounds at 6'3", which gives me a BMR of something like 2,100 calories, and the max my digestive system can have is limited to something like 5,500 calories. That's a lot of calories. However, like, in the case of like Thanksgiving, anything over 5,500 calories, my digestive system can't handle in a 24-hour period, and it's just waste. So, the idea here is choose your fuel wisely. Your digestive system is not a garbage disposal. I'm all for food is not just fuel, but when we're talking about your safety and your ability to perform, it's okay to temporarily treat food like fuel. So just want to point that out. All right, so during the tournament, you have three priorities: hydration, avoiding GI upset, which means fight good, don't poop, and nutrition. All right, so hydration first. Hydration, again, is water and electrolytes, not just water. Most people that are not super active can get away with drinking to thirst. However, if you're doing intense activity or you're doing something in the heat, if you're thirsty, you're already likely dehydrated. So, circumstances involving high sweat output or exercising in the heat may require more deliberate hydration routines. So the idea of a routine means you have to like plan, you have to be specific, you have to address what you're needing. So in our case, we're wearing equipment that's bulky, heavy, mostly black in most cases, and we're going to be in the heat or possibly direct sun. So this is multiple variables and factors that are kind of pointing to we need a hydration routine. We can't just leave it to chance. So the research shows that while people are doing intense exercise, relying on thirst alone actually leads to under consuming fluid. And in the studies, people only replaced half of what they sweat out. And we want our tanks topped off at all times if we can. So, one thing to point out is that as you sweat more, as sweat rate increases, the amount of sodium leaving the body is much higher. And this is where you see people's old HEMA jackets that they've never washed that are like white crust. That's the salt they've sweat out. So this is a case where, hey, we need to be deliberate about this. What is recommended is an oral rehydration solution. So most people are like, oh, just slab Pedialyte and Gatorade and none tablets. Pedialyte is specifically based on oral rehydration for children with diarrhea and no food in their system. So a better idea was if you're taking some of these things like Pedialyte or Gatorade, dilute it some. So if a scoop calls for 12 ounces of water, do a half scoop, or do a scoop with 24 ounces of water. It's going to be less coming into your system because you don't want too much, because again, that's you're going to overhydrate and actually kind of flips over and leads to dehydration. You can also add protein powder into the mixture for recovery purposes because you want calories in there as well. It's going to slow down your digestion and it's actually going to allow you to soak up the hydration better. And a small amount of sugar can actually help the fluid move more effectively. So it's more effective than water and electrolytes. I'm going to say this multiple times. We want to sip, not chug. All right, so this is from a study. This is the beverage hydration index. Still water, it just means regular water, and sparkling water are at like a 1 index. There are some things that are below that, like a beer or coffee, but then there are things that are more hydrating than water, and one of those is an oral rehydration solution. Orange juice is on there, and you'll see skim milk is on there. Um, I don't really know that I'd recommend, since we're also trying to avoid GI upset. I don't know that sipping on skim milk between bouts is a really good idea. But if we look at someone that's like done and needs to rehydrate and there's no more activity, this is why like a skim chocolate milk is one of the best recovery drinks because it does rehydrate you and it actually gives you a lot of the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that you need. So, as I mentioned, excessive water intake, particularly without electrolytes, can be bad for you. It's called hyponatremia, which means you have low sodium in your blood. Your blood's too thin, and that's not good. Symptoms include nausea, headache, confusion, and fatigue. And some of those symptoms also start to look like heat exhaustion. So this is where, if we're also going to be in the heat, we don't want to play around with this. We don't want to just be flushing all of our sodium out of our system. And again, sip your hydration beverage, do not chug. All right, so this is a our body has this built-in way to determine our hydration, right? Uh, if you've ever been to a military base, my brother was our brother-in-law was in the Marines, and we got to see his bunk during basic, and they had this on the wall for the Marines that were in basic. So this kind of tells you where you are as far as being hydrated. If you're entirely clear, like 100% clear, it's probably you're overhydrated, and you may be actually uh, peeing out sodium, which you don't want. So just a note here, it says the toilet water dilutes urine by 1 to 2 shades. So if you're looking at it in the toilet, it's probably going to be lighter than it actually is coming out of your body. So I know this is not the most fun graphic to have to look at, but it's just something that you need to be aware of, and it's how your body functions. All right, so nutrition during the day of the tournament. So for each hour of constant activity, you should be replacing a half to 1 calorie times your body weight in pounds. So for example, 240 pounds. So I know I said I was 250 earlier. I wrote this when I was 240. I gained 10 pounds of muscle over the course of 2 years. So yay me. But at 240 pounds, for every hour of activity, I would take in 120 to 240 calories. And the ideal split of what those calories are made of would be 75% carbs, 15% fat, and 10% protein. Now, um, you are generally not going to have continuous activity for the entirety of a HEMA tournament. It's like hurry up and wait, depending on the format. At Broken Plow and Blood on the River, and Pittsburgh Fighters Guild, we are pretty much championing a continuous fencing format. So it is a little bit higher of intensity, and you are fighting for longer. So your calorie needs maybe a little bit higher. But the idea here is like, if you had an hour of constant activity, depending on your body size, like the max is 250 calories, and that's not that many when you think about it. But some real world food examples would be something like dried fruit. You can add salt to the fruit. You can have mixed nuts, which would be salted, pretzels, yada yada yada. The nuts would have the fat, but my go-to is, just for ease of convenience, is I freeze some Uncrustables. For those of you that don't know, an Uncrustable is a pre-made frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwich without the crust. But I'll toss them in my bag frozen, and by the time they thaw out, they're ready to eat, and it gives you a good mixture of carbs, fat, and protein. All right, so back to the most critical one, really, other than hydration, is GI upset. So we have data from multiple studies. The most uh, prolific data is going to be from ultra marathon finishers. So 91% of runners have some type of GI upset. And by GI upset, I mean, diarrhea, throwing up, bubble gut, gas, just a general bad feeling in your stomach that's like, okay, probably need to be close to a toilet. And it's very common, as you can see by the numbers. So how do we avoid that? And this is what the data says. Eating and drinking earlier in the day results in a lower incidence of later GI upset. Under eating and under hydrating equals more GI upset than overeating. So people that are like, I'm not gonna eat anything because I'm nervous, and intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting could be a useful tool. It's not like fixes everything, but in the case of avoiding GI upset and high intensity activity, under eating or avoiding eating is a very bad idea. So, what can we take away from this data? These things apply to you if you've ever had GI upset from competition. So, there's a couple reasons for GI upset, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit. But when we exercise, especially intensely, we are actually pulling blood away from our digestive system, and that's a result of fight or flight, right? That's part of our nervous system prioritizing blood flow to our limbs and away from our core, so that we can use our limbs to escape danger, not become food, but we're fight or flight here. We're going to fight. And as a result of that, um, we're not absorbing nutrients as much. So that's another reason why it's important to have nutrients in your system earlier, so the digestion process can start, because by the time we're pulling blood away from our midsection and our digestive system, we're not absorbing anything. It's just bouncing around in there, sloshing around. That's a good word. And this happens even more so when it's hot. So if you're going to be fighting in heat, you want to avoid this situation as much as possible. So essentially what happens is we have our digestive system. If we're loaded up with food and there's no blood flow or reduced blood flow, and if we're moving around a bunch, all that food is just sloshing around in there. I apologize for the graphic nature of this, but I want to get the point across. What you can do is take some gas X pills, and it will really help with that situation if you're experiencing issues. So along those lines, just like I mentioned in the nutrition portion, we want to avoid eating foods we're not used to eating. It can happen that when people get contaminated foods, like in the case of a runner, like people stop at an aid station and their hands are all dirty and sweaty, and they're just grabbing food and touching it. So easy is like, eat food that has a peel, bring your own food, or ask the event organizers to have food that's already wrapped, so that you're not just everybody's grabbing everything and sharing germs, and that's when you're more likely to more likely to have GI upset. And lastly, if you're getting stomach cramps, it's not from the presence of food and water; it's from the lack of blood. Your stomach is requesting more blood, and your nervous system has prioritized it elsewhere. And adrenaline can be a cause of that as well, because adrenaline ties into the nervous system. All right, so what do athletes with lower GI upset have in common? They eat early, they drink early. They have a little bit of fat in their first meal, their breakfast. So like a serving of peanut butter. It doesn't mean eat a bunch of bacon and eggs. And again, I'm not going to get into the keto versus carbs type of thing here for now, but we do know that all the data supports that. There are some activity levels that can be better fat fueled, but for the type of activity we're doing, it's going to use our carbs stored in our body for fuel first. So normal meals, no need to carb load. Don't eat 4,000 calories of pasta the day before your tournament. Don't try new foods. I would recommend no gels, super processed protein bars, specifically avoiding sugar alcohols. Those are known to cause GI upset, especially if it's a new food. If you use this stuff and you never get GI upset, don't change a thing. But I'm just giving you the information in general, especially if you're coming into this for the first time. So recommendations are drink early, eat often. So if you're taking bites of things, spreading those calories out across the day, don't drink more than 30 ounces of liquid per hour. Uh, you know, 15% fat intake. So that's pretty low. We want to maintain the amount of fat in our system. We want some. We don't want to go no fat. We want to slow digestion down a little bit, but we don't want to have too much fat because fat just slows digestion down and it's a very slow energy source. So do not attempt to adapt to fasted training with intermittent fasting if you've had GI upset ever before from competition. Okay, tournaments and heat. What I recommend doing before your event is practice your heat management routine beforehand. So that means spar under similar circumstances. I have on here acclimate to fighting outside before the event. If you train in air conditioning, don't wait till the day of to not train in air conditioning. Uh, Depending on the format, right? Our continuous fencing format gives fighters breaks between rounds. So we want people to be effective and efficient at taking off their mask, unzipping their jacket to shed some heat, but we don't want to take the jacket all the way off. Between rounds, meaning if you're like done with pulls and you have like an hour or something to kill, take your jacket off, yes, but between rounds we don't want to take the jacket all the way off. We just want to unzip it, let some air in and take our mask off. I recommend having someone in your corner to help with this. uh, Having a coach is always useful, but even if you don't have someone coaching your fencing, it's super useful to have someone just helping you get your mask off, getting you a sip of water. And it's very common once adrenaline hits to like forget to drink, but your corner person can help you actually force you to take a sip of water. At Blood on the River, our intention is that everybody has a buddy, so that you have a corner person to force you to actually hydrate. Because, like I said, when adrenaline hits, you may not want to. And as I mentioned earlier, fight outside before the event, not day of. Don't acclimate then. I'm going to say it again. Sip water often, do not chug. You are limited to 30 ounces of liquid being absorbed per hour in the kidneys. I recommend having a cooler handy with some cold packs wrapped in a cloth. You can put them in your armpits or on your neck or even on your inner thigh. You want a cloth because you don't want the cold directly on your skin, but this will allow, we're basically putting them near major arteries so that the blood moving past the cold pack is being cooled down. I've seen people with battery operated fans that have a mister built in, or you can just have a spray bottle to mist yourself off, and then take advantage of shade or cooler areas when not fighting. If you don't have to be available for the fight, I understand you, and you're not cornering for somebody. I understand you want to be at the event, but be proactive and think about the long term, right? Events are long. It's a whole day usually. So if you fight early and you have some time, go into air conditioning, go into shade, relax, close your eyes, breathe, just get out of the heat, get out of the sun. So lastly, I want to touch on heat exhaustion and stroke. It's important that you learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of heat illness early. And it's not about just protecting yourself. You could save someone's life if you know the signs and you look for them in your fellow fighters. Those signs in general are slumping, slouching, slurring of words, general disorientation. That should be a cause for alarm. So please check on these people and bring awareness of their condition to the medical staff as well as tournament organizers as soon as possible. Quick shout out to Chris Burke, who provided some of this information and reminded me that, hey, I should probably get this information out there. All right, and real quick, the difference between heat exhaustion or heat stroke is heat exhaustion is dizziness, thirst, heavy sweating, nausea, weakness. You should move to a cooler area, loosen your clothing, sip cool water. And you should get medical attention for heat exhaustion too, because it can lead to heat stroke, which is confusion, dizziness, or losing consciousness. And you can die from heat stroke or cause permanent disability. So this is where even if you're engaging with medical personnel at that time, I'd recommend calling 911. The big thing with calling 911 is don't yell, someone call 911. In an emergency, people tend to panic, especially if they've never been in one before. So it's incredibly important to point at someone specifically and say, I need you to call 911. You don't just say, someone call 911, because everybody waits for someone else to do it. Okay, aftercare. Let's say the tournament's all over and it's time to take all your gear off, put all your gear away, and relax. So I would continue to rehydrate, move around some. You don't want to get stiff. What I usually do is kind of roll around with the foam roller and stretch a little bit and just kind of move my body, and just so it doesn't get super stiff. Uh, as adrenaline wears off, you probably just kind of want to do a spot check to see if you got any injuries. My favorite thing is looking for bruises in the shower afterwards, and that they always look worse under like hotel lighting, right? And then feed the body what it needs. You need a balanced meal now that's balanced between fat, protein, carbs. You could think of it as like 33% protein, 33% fat, 33% carbs. Yes, I know that only adds up to 99%, but you understand what I mean. If you don't wear compression clothing when you fight, now's a good time to put it on, and that's just material that kind of is very tight and has compression, because that stimulates blood flow. You want blood moving to all the areas that you just used intensely. Uh, a good idea would be if you fight in compression clothes, a good idea would be to have a after tournament compression set, so they're not wearing wet, stinky, dirty clothes. So have two sets. If you can get a cold shower or an ice bath, I'm not going to be one of those people that's like everyone should just jump in an ice cold bath, but a cold shower will do wonders. And then get some sleep. I know with some events being multiple days, it is tempting to want to stay up late and hang out, and you should, but also try to get 8 hours of sleep if you can. It's going to help with how you feel the next day, and this is incredibly important. If you have an event that's multiple days. One thing I noticed the last giant tournament I was at was that with Europeans, they didn't do any of their partying and socializing until they were done competing, because they prioritized recovery and sleep. And then the U.S. fighters tended to go hard on the party um, every night. And that, again, that's fine. That the situation where that happened and I had to help someone in a tournament is kind of what led to the creation of HEMA Strong, anyways. Okay, so thank you for that. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. Um, But if you're not a member of HEMA Strong, would love for you to join and say hi. We do have a website. As I mentioned, it has a blog. We also have our YouTube channel. And we also do offer coaching services for individuals and clubs. And you can email me directly. I'm also available on social media. Instagram is coach_Chuck_Gross. And I'm just Chuck Gross on Facebook. I have a public profile. I'm the only Chuck Gross with a giant beard and a sword and a lightsaber in my profile. So again, hopefully this helps. And if you have any questions, please let me know.